Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, Jan Michael here. Haven't talked about video games in a while, so let's rank the 2010 Video Game of the Year winners. Holy crap, what a decade for video games. Out of the 10 winners of the 2010s, I think 5 of them are gonna go down in history as some of the best games of all time. Typically, when I do these ranking videos, I like to break things down into categories. The ones that I thought were okay, or the ones that I thought were boring, etc, etc. But I'm only gonna be doing 2 this time around. The bottom 5, which I think are good games. I don't think there were any bad ones that won this decade. Good games that maybe won't stand the test of time or be included in the best games of all time. And then the top 5, which I truly do think whenever there is a discussion about what the best game of all time is, these are gonna come up in the conversation. So sit back, relax, because I am very excited to share this list with you. But before that, a couple of things. First, I did have to take the gaming landscape at the time of the individual wins. Because, and quite frankly, there are some games on this list that have had sequels that maybe improved upon the winner. So I didn't want to diminish the win just because something greater came out afterwards. Or in the case of one, you can't play that game anymore. And as such, it would just automatically be at the bottom, which again is unfair, especially how big that one entry was at the time of its win. The other thing that I have to mention is the thing that's gonna piss all of you guys off. This is not the Game Awards Game of the Year winners. This is the DICE Award Game of the Year winners. Why? Because I fucking hate the Game Awards. I really don't think they even care about the awards. Like a lot of the times they'll read them off in quick succession, don't let anybody come up and talk. Or if somebody does come up and talk, it's like they already knew they were gonna win. So it's like the whole thing is a facade. It's like, it's just supposed to be one big commercial where they're just playing game trailers, which, fine, I'm not against that. But when you start pushing legendary game designers like Eiji Onuma off the stage, you know you done fucked up in my book. Plus, the DICE Awards have always been seen as the Oscars of the video game industry. And as I am an Oscar-related channel, it just makes sense. So go ahead, get your anger out in the comments below. I'm sure you're gonna say whatever you want. And I'm here to say, I don't give a fuck. Go tell it to someone who cares. With that being said, let's jump into my number 10. Number 10, Fallout 4.
We do have coming in confirmed reports of nuclear detonation.
My God. Our soldiers will raid. War never changes.
Fallout has had a huge resurgence lately thanks to the TV show. It's been getting critical acclaim, it's going to be getting multiple seasons, people have fallen in love with Walter Goggins as the Ghoul, so you're probably thinking, why the hell would you have Fallout 4 at the very bottom? And quite frankly, it's just because it's not that unique of an experience. I don't think it's a bad game. I just want to stress that I don't think any of the games I'm going to be talking about today I think are bad. Again, I just think we've done this before, like especially coming off of Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, which is amazing. That's still getting ports to this day. So when you compare it, which is almost impossible to not do just because you're coming right off of that entry, it just doesn't quite stack up. There are interesting things throughout it. There are still interesting side missions. There's still interesting characters. I like the VAT system. I've always enjoyed that. Slow motion, seeing people's heads explode, throwing the nukes. All that is cool. There's some terrifying moments throughout the game as well. You could easily get startled by being snuck up on some of these ginormous monsters and creatures. So I think all of that, it does well. But because we've seen it done before, it's just more of the same, which is not bad, but when you compare it to some of the other Game of the Year winners, which we'll talk about soon, it's just not that unique of a thing. Two quick asides that have nothing to do with the placement of Fallout 4 at number 10, it's things I wanted to talk about real quick. First, while I don't typically want to discuss what should have won in the respective years, just because I am just taking a look at the product by itself compared to all the other winners. I do have to mention this was the year that The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt was also nominated for Game of the Year. And how the fuck did that one not win? Like, that one is seen as one of the best video games of all time. And it was winning all the awards, so for it to fumble Game of the Year is just baffling to me. And I know you dickbags are gonna say, well, CJ, that's why you gotta take the Game Awards more seriously, and fuck off with that nonsense. If you're gonna discredit a whole organization because of one bad choice, then fucking discredit the whole Oscars, because they've made a shit ton of bad choices. But I don't see you guys doing that, huh? Second of all, again, nothing to do with anything, I just wanted to share it. I have no idea when I'll be able to share this story again, but I used to work at a GameStop, and during the release of Fallout 4, they had us memorize these bullet points for selling the game. It's just a directive we had, and a couple came in and they started talking about Fallout 4, so I was just going over the bullet points. I was generally very excited to play the game. I hadn't done so yet, so I was really looking forward to the possibilities of what the game was going to do, and they liked my energy and enthusiasm so much that they revealed themselves to be secret shoppers for Bethesda at the very end, and then they gifted me a free copy of the game, which, cool, again, has nothing to do with the placement of Fallout 4 at number 10. I just thought it was an interesting story. So, moving on. Number 9, Untitled Goose Game. Oh, I can already hear the angry clacking of your keyboards going, what the hell, Jan? Untitled Goose Game above Fallout 4? A game that gives you hundreds of hours of adventure versus a small little indie title where you play as a fucking goose? Are you fucking stupid, Jan? This goes back to what I said about unique experiences. For me, I like Fallout 4. I can recommend Fallout 4. I think you're gonna have a great time with Fallout 4 in certain regards, especially if you've never played a game like that before. I have. Fallout 4 was not a unique experience to me. Untitled Goose Game, however, was a unique experience, and I'll always treasure those over games that I already see where everything's gonna go, even though it has some great moments in it. And why wouldn't you want to play as a goose that fucks around with other people? This is not a ginormous experience, I'll grant you that, but it is one that had a smile on my face throughout the entirety of it. It's a game I easily was able to show to my wife. She was able to play it. Heck, my kid now has just recently found the game and is enjoying it herself. So I do think it's something you're able to share with people and be there with them, just because it's not a very long game, so you're able to have that joy with them all over again. Fallout 4, I'm sure you're able to do that to a degree, but are you really gonna sit down with your significant other for hours on end, seeing them do every little thing, making them experience all the walking, all the discovery? You don't want to ruin that for them, but are you really gonna share that moment with them? I'm sure some of you will, but a majority of you probably will just leave them to their own devices. Untitled Goose Game was a unique experience, and it was an experience I could share with my family and my friends. And to me, I treasure that more than a game like Fallout 4. And again, I'm not saying Fallout 4 is bad. I like Fallout 4. I just liked the experience of Untitled Goose Game just a bit more. But if you can't accept that, make your own list. It's not stopping you. This doesn't block you from making your own list. At least, I don't think it does. Does it? Just go and try to make a video. Is your body frozen? You're not able to move? Oh shit. I got more power than I thought. Number 8, Journey. This one comes at an interesting time in gaming history. During the early 2000s, I remember any single time an indie game was released and it got Game of the Year buzz, there was this like dedicated hardcore gamer group that would go, "That's not a real game, it's a walking simulator, you guys don't even understand," and they would like bring out like the dictionary and tell you what the definition of a game was, and it's just like baffling to me. Like their concept of what a game is was so small that they couldn't break out of that shell. And to me, I've always wanted more people to play video games. I don't want it to be an exclusive club. I want more people to share in that experience, because that way, when the politicians or the people that are ignorant of games start to attack it, there are more people to fight back and go, "No, I play this, and I can tell you that is not the case." So yeah, I don't want it to be exclusive. I want it to be inclusive. But that's just me. Journey was the first real indie game to win Game of the Year, and I think it's a fantastic experience. Granted, compared to more modern indie games, it probably doesn't hold up as grand, but especially taking a look at it at the time of its release, at the time of its win, I think it was definitely a necessary win for that genre. On the surface, it seems like a simple adventure. You're on, as the title suggests, a journey to the top of this mountain. Why? For what reason? What are you gonna find there? You don't know. The game doesn't really tell you that. You're just starting this journey. And if you're playing online, sometimes you'll come across other creatures of your ilk. You can't talk to them. You just kind of go on this silent journey, if you will, together. You may separate. It's almost like a metaphor for life. You'll go on this journey, sometimes with other people, sometimes by yourself. And if you really dig deep, like if you're somebody who just needs storytelling, if you need lore, if you really pay attention to the world and what it shows you, you can find that. You can scratch that itch. But if you don't, you just want to play a game, if you will, you're gonna get that here. It's beautiful to behold, especially back then. Just the graphics alone were wonderful. It was easy to just stand in place and see everything move, or see things in the distance. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is the first video game where the score itself was nominated outside of Game Awards, if you will. I think one of the big award shows, like the Grammys, I think it was, it got a nomination there. So that is a huge achievement. And again, it was just one of those things that made me think, wow, video games they're breaking into a more mainstream media, and soon everybody's going to be talking about video games. It's going to be a part of everybody's daily life. And that's what I love. Again, I think this is the game that needed to win Game of the Year at this time. It was important for it to do so. And yeah, I still can recommend it. I still say go back and play it. Granted, newer indie games probably have done it better since, but I still think it's important to go back and just pay homage to what this title did. Number 7, Dragon Age Inquisition.
It is difficult to bear what happened here. You walked out of the Fade, and our soldiers found you.
Ah yes, back when that whole BioWare magic was still in full swing. A bunch of fucking idiots. Look, BioWare has had some amazing games in the past. This was, I believe, one of the final ones that really knocked our socks off. And to talk about how much I like this one, I should go back and talk about the previous entries. Dragon Age Origins is amazing. That I consider one of the best games of all time. And there were so many ways to just start the game, in so many different places, and so many different classes. I was shocked when I first turned on that game and saw that. And I loved that game so much, I would go out of my way to make sure I searched every crevice. I wanted to do every side mission in it. I loved that experience, and I was sad once it was finally over. And while, granted, I don't think Dragon Age 2 is that great of a game, I still really liked the world and the characters to the point that I also wanted to do everything in there. So of course, when Dragon Age Inquisition came out, which I think is back in top form, I was once again just sucked into its world. I loved the characters, I loved the setting, I wanted to explore everything. This is one of the few games that I actually would hug the outside map area just to make sure I didn't miss anything hidden away. Just because, again, I wanted to continue playing. I wanted to continue finding things to do and continue doing quests. That's how much I liked the experience. The combat was better. I really liked the story to it. Again, the characters, their individual tales. I think that's always one of the best things about BioWare. Just who are your companions? What is their backstory? I think they did that so well. And this game still on a high bar. Not as great as some of previous entries, but I still think it's a top-notch game, and it was one of my favorite games that released that year, and definitely worthy of winning Game of the Year in my eyes. Number 6, Overwatch.
We are compassion.
We are determination.
We are harmony.
This is what I mean by a game you can no longer play. Nope, now you have to play Overwatch 2, which fucking sucks. I mean, going from the top of a mountain to the lowest of valleys, it's day and night. That's how jarring those two titles are. Broken promises, lying to us, modes that are just no longer that fun to play. They're cutting out, they cut how many characters you can have in one match. What a goddamn shame. But none of that was in place when the original Overwatch released. That game took the world by storm. Which is funny because at the time, I wasn't a huge fan of the premise, of the style of game that it was. Just looking at it from the outside, I thought, oh man, just playing a few modes online, that seems kind of boring. Like, for me, I always like big epic stories or quests or unique things. So, I don't know, to see something like this that honestly didn't look all that appealing, I just wasn't aware of why so many people were loving this game. But because other people around me were playing it, including fellow coworkers who were telling me, no, you gotta get the game, you gotta play with us, I jumped on board. And I got bit by that bug immediately. I understood. Like, you have these colorful cast of characters, all with different abilities, with different classes, and even if it was a class you typically didn't play in online modes, you were just so fascinated by that design that you wanted to know more about them, you wanted to play them, you wanted to unlock all the different skins of the characters, all the different emotes. Granted, I may dock a few points because this started the whole loot box travesty, which it's so fucking bad. It's one of the worst things that ever happened to the video game industry, but I digress. Overwatch was fucking amazing, and I understood. It was just so addicting to get the play of the game, to get that highlight, and to get all your friends or strangers to vote for you as being the best player. That was no greater feeling at the time. Out of all the games I've talked about so far, this is the first one that I had that itch where I had to go, no, just one more match, just one more match. Even Dragon Age Inquisition, I remember there are times where, yeah, I'm tired, I'm gonna put the game down for now. But Overwatch, I kept going. I knew I should have stopped long ago, but I just needed that one more match. That's how addicting it was. And it's such a shame you can no longer play that original version. I mean, Overwatch 2, I'm sure will scratch that itch to a degree, but I just don't think it has that same impact as the first one. I mean, that started this whole trend of that hero shooter. This is what, you have Apex now, you have the Valorant now, you have all these big titles, and I think a lot of it, they do have to pay respects to Overwatch that really blew this genre up. So I think for all of that and much more that I just don't have a chance to talk about, Overwatch definitely was a worthy Game of the Year winner, and it contributed quite a bit to the gaming world. It's just too bad you can't play it anymore. I know I'm only taking the gaming landscape at the time, but this is really why it just falls short of being that legendary game that I think people will talk for aeons to come. Okay, so those were the bottom 5. The games that were good, I just don't think they're gonna go down in the history books as the best of all time. But these next five, I can see an argument for any of them being number one, and it would make complete sense. These are the games that whenever somebody brings up, what's the best game of all time? People are gonna bring up every single one of these and make a valid argument about why that should be it. So as you can imagine, I had a really hard time ranking these next five. I'm not gonna make anybody happy. So this really is just gonna be a personal ranking. I mean, it's always been personal, but even more so with the next five. So feel free to rearrange this in whatever order. At one point, I even thought about just making them all number one, but I thought that would be cheating. So that being said, let's jump right on into number five. Number five, The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. Ooh, I can already just feel the hate on the clacking of the keyboards already. Look, Legend of Zelda is my favorite game series of all time. I love Breath of the Wild. I just, when comparing it to the other four, probably have the most grievances with this title. But it is still a legendary game, one that people will easily bring up in conversation as one of the best games of all time. Heck, people were comparing it to Ocarina of Time. That's how much they loved it. And Ocarina of Time, whether it be or be not your favorite, a lot of people consider that to be one of the greatest video games of all time. Heck, that would be number one on a lot of people's books. So I understand the passion behind the series, trust me. Even the games in the series that, like, I argue aren't that great, I still love, I still play them. But there's one big problem for me in the game, and that is the weapon degradation system. I fucking hate that system. It is not a good system in any game. And the worst thing is, every argument that I've heard for it has been stupid. Like, I think one person said, it's not that bad. Not that bad is still bad. So, I don't know, it doesn't matter what you say. That is like the one negative spot in that game. If that was gone, I probably would rank this just a little bit higher. But that being said, I think what makes an amazing game is one that you can look past the things that you don't like and still get lost in it. And yeah, I can easily do that with Breath of the Wild. I would go through Breath of the Wild again, even with that mechanic, and still have a blast and love my time with it. Now, I'm not gonna say people were tired of the Zelda series at this point, but I think it is fair to say that a lot of people were starting to feel that it was just all the same thing. I mean, even grade entries are just kind of entries that we'd seen done before, just newer, if you will. It was still the same thing. It wasn't a new experience. So for Eiji Numa to come along and be like, you know what, we're gonna reinvent the fucking wheel here. We're gonna make an open world experience where you can go anywhere at any time. You wanna beat Calamity Ganon right at the beginning? Go for it. You wanna explore for hundreds of hours? Go for it. You want to check out all the story missions, all the side missions? Go for it. You wanna cook? You wanna build things? Go for it, right? There was just so much you could do in that title, and it was amazing. And the storytelling aspect, I'm not talking about the main story. The main story is pretty much what you expect, but the storytelling aspect of the world around you. The game doesn't tell you what this crumbled building, architect, whatever is. You have to kind of imagine what happened there. When you see a field full of broken down robot enemies, the Guardians, what happened there? What battle happened there? The game doesn't always flat out tell you. You just have to imagine it. And I love that, leaving it up to your imagination. Speaking of the Guardians, one of the most terrifying enemies in video games in recent memory. Every single time that song would pop up and you'd hear that little like targeting you, you would just freeze. You'd be like, oh, fucking shit, no. So great, just to elicit that reaction from people, fantastic. The first Zelda game, not including the CGI ones, which we don't talk about, to include voice acting. And while granted that's hit or miss, I still don't think it's that bad, and I generally enjoy a little bit of voice acting in my game. So yeah, whether you like that or not, I don't think it's bad. Honestly, the small bad things about it are nitpicks. Again, the only one big thing is the weapon degradation system. I mean, even that, I just don't consider enough to really discredit the game at all, to knock it down any points in my book. If I am going to compare it to the sequel Tears of the Kingdom, there are mechanics that were introduced in Tears of the Kingdom that I think are genius, and I don't know how I could play Breath of the Wild without thinking to myself, man, I wish I could do this from Tears of the Kingdom in this title. So maybe if you want to compare those two together, you may not feel as strongly about it, but again, just going off of the win at the time, and it is very worthy winner. It revolutionized it, it reinvented it, renewed interest, I think, in the Zelda series. And for a series that has gone on for so long, that is quite a feat. Number 4, God of War.
The longer you wait, the more damage you do. He will resent you, and you may lose him forever.
You're next! I'll rip your head off!
There are consequences to killing a god!
Why? How do you know? How do you know?
This is another example of how you reinvent a series. God of War had been on hiatus for some time. In fact, if I remember correctly, I think Sony didn't even want to bring it back. They thought it was time to let Kratos rest, if you will. And if you look back at the previous entries, for a series to have that many games and be really good, like out of all of them, I think only one is mediocre. I don't even think it's bad, it's just whatever. I mean, is very impressive. So yeah, I don't think the series needed to be on hiatus for as long as it did. But I think that wait made the return so much more impactful. And it was perfect. Like when I was in high school, that first title came out, and I was probably of that edgy mindset. Like, yeah, kill everything, fuck everyone, all that sort of stuff. Like the mindset was very much the same. And now at a more mature time in my life, when that new entry came out, if you will, it was perfect. I mean, a lot of us were already parents or about to be parents. Our mindset was different. It's like the series grew up with us, which is such a unique experience. I don't think you can say that about every single series out there, or people born at the right time for a series to grow up with them. So, I mean, already it just touched me a little bit more because of that. But the journey that you go on here is such a fascinating one. I love the chemistry between Kratos and his son. I love pretty much all these characters. The epic boss fights, the shocking moments, the almost tear-breaking moments. There's some awesome, badass moments that, yes, the game is a few years old now, but I don't want to spoil it just because, goddamn, does it get your blood pumping at points. I think it is as close to as perfect as a game can get. If I had maybe one slight little tiny problem, maybe I think the journey is a little bit, it extends in some contrived ways, like video game logic, if you will, but whatever. Again, it's a small nitpick, not enough to discredit the game whatsoever. I think it's fantastic. It's one of the best video games of all time. So there you go. That's why it's on this list and this high up. Number 3, Mass Effect 2.
I will show you true power.
We need a leader. And surround them with the brightest, the toughest, the deadliest allies we can find.
This is pinnacle BioWare. I still consider Mass Effect 2 to be their best game of all time. And you can make arguments for a lot of their other titles, especially during this point in time. This was like the peak of them. But before we talk about this, let me talk about the previous entry. Because Mass Effect, the first one, I thought was good. Like, I didn't think it was like spectacular. Like, there were problems with like the combat. It was glitchy. I had to restart the game twice when I was really far into it just because of stupid glitches and bugs. So it pissed me off. You didn't get to romance Tally in the first one, which was a sin. So yeah, the first one had some rough spots, but I still loved my experience with it. I just said I restarted it twice, even though I was super far into the game, just because I really liked the world, really liked the setting. God damn, it had some shocking moments, and I was super excited to jump into the second one. Now, everything that I just said about the first one, they cranked up, like in good ways, in good ways. So all the problems with the combat, gone. Combat now, excellent. All the problems with the glitchiness, I don't remember bumping into. I'm sure there were some in there, but nothing that affected where I had to restart the game twice. So already great. You couldn't romance Tally in the first one, you can now romance Tally in the second one. Fucking fantastic. Oh man, there were just some... The game starts with you fucking dying and being resurrected, and how you play the game, whether good or bad, you get those lines, and it could either be I think it's blue or red, and fucking badass. The final suicide mission, if you're not quick enough to rescue your crewmates, they can all die. Your own party members can die. You can die if you're not careful. God damn, that game had so many amazing moments. There were so many times I like cheered to myself in my room because I'm a nerd, but I was just so excited. There were just so many amazing moments. Mass Effect 2, one of my favorite games of all time, and the Mass Effect trilogy is my favorite trilogy of that console generation. If you never have played those, I highly recommend going back and doing so. There are remasters that they've made that you can easily pick up and try. It's just fan-fucking-tastic. The pinnacle of BioWare. And again, if there is any complaints, which I can't even think of this at this point in time, maybe the planet scanning thing was kind of dull, but again, one tiny little thing that does not discredit the game. It's still one of the best games of all time. This list is hard. So I've got a confession to make. I know I just said that I had no idea how I was going to rank the 5, and that's true for the most part. But I know what my number 1 was going to be from the very beginning, and that's because that is my favorite game of all time. So, if I am to take my personal bias out of the equation, I think what I'm about to talk about at number 2 probably should be number 1, with just how impactful that game was to the industry, and is still impacting the industry to this day. It just makes complete sense. But as I said, this is going to be more of a personal list. I gotta put this one at number 2, and I will gush about number 1 in a few minutes. So here we go. Number 2, The Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim.
Their tongue is Dovahkiin, Dragonborn.
What can I say? This game is still being ported. Different editions are coming out to this day. People are still modding the hell out of it. They're making the game feel fresh and new. And once again, just kind of like how BioWare was at the peak with Mass Effect 2, this was Bethesda at the peak with their games. After this, it was kind of like the start of the downtrend. Like, you had Fallout 4, which was still very respected, but that was around the time that people were like, man, these games are like buggy and glitchy. Like, can't they like polish them a bit more? And then you had the horrendous Fallout 76, and then that's when we discovered that Todd Howard had that mentality of release it now, fix it later, which, what the fuck's wrong with you? But Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, even though it was buggy, it was like beautifully buggy. Like, it made you laugh. Like, you anticipated, you were excited for the bugs, which granted, maybe that was the wrong mindset to have, but it created a unique experience. And that's just when the game wasn't working properly. When it was working properly, it was still fucking amazing. From the story to all the characters to everything you could discover. This was a game that if you and 10 buddies Like, just, it's the weekend, you guys are gonna go off and play the game the entire weekend. You would come back on Monday and you would all have completely, vastly different experiences. Like, it would be rare if two of you did one thing the same. And I know a lot of games do that nowadays, like you can have those experiences, but back then, that to me blew my mind. And holy shit, there were so many interesting side quests. I always remember the hangover style side quests where you like get drunk out, pass out, and then you have to retrace your steps about what happened to you the night prior, and it leads to a fucking great payoff. Like, there were so many missions like that. This was the game that began, oh, I used to be an adventurer like you, but then I took an arrow to the knee. Still, I see that being used in culture today. You had the dragon shouting, which is an amazing ability. And here's the kicker. For this to be so high up on my list, I've never been a huge fan of these type of experiences when I was a kid. Like, I played the previous Elder Scrolls, but I always thought, oh, okay, it's a fun experience, but it's not really for me. Elder Scrolls just fucking blew the doors off of that mindset. From the trailer, which is one of the best video game trailers of all time, I knew this was gonna be something special. You could feel it in your bones. And I played it and I lost hours, hundreds of hours to this game, and I still get the itch to want to go back and play it. It's goddamn excellent. And yeah, if I'm to take my personal bias out, it should be number one, just because of how impactful it was on the industry. But it's not my personal number one. And we're gonna talk about why the one that did make it is. Number one, The Last of Us.
Once upon a time, I had somebody that I cared about. And in this world, that sort of shit's good for one thing. Getting you killed.
Before we talk about the game, let's talk about the history of Naughty Dog. It has nothing to do with the game itself or the placement of it. It's just, I want to talk about it. And it's kind of bittersweet to talk about nowadays, but I truly don't think that Naughty Dog has made a bad game. There's been some better than others, no doubt. But I don't think they made a bad game. And it all started with Crash Bandicoot for me. It is the first time I was ever conscious of a video game developer. To me, it was always like, oh, PlayStation made that, or oh, Nintendo made that, right? I had no concept of, oh, there's different developers that will work for these companies or make games to put on the platforms, right? But this was the first time. And I fucking loved Crash Bandicoot. I played all three of them, played the racing one, fucking loved them. And then when Jak and Daxter came out, exact same thing. Fucking loved all of those. Played all of them. Even the racing one, I thought they were all fantastic. Uncharted, loved all of them. Even the racing one, just joking, there's no racing one. I always thought it'd be funny if there was though. But you see what I mean. And as I grew up, it's like these games grew up with me. It's like what I said with God of War, only more so. Crash Bandicoot, kids game, right? I was a kid, I enjoyed it. Jak, it started to get a little bit more mature, right? It's not like super mature, but you know, it was the right mature for me now being in like my teens. Uncharted, I was just getting out of high school, so my mind could comprehend a more mature story, if you will, at that point in time. And then The Last of Us, where you went full on mature. At that point, I thought I was at the right time in my life to be able to appreciate a game that way. And that's where we jump into the game itself. I was infatuated with The Last of Us. Like, I could not put down the game. I was terrified of the game ending. Not only because I had no idea what was going to happen to these characters, which I fell in love with, but because I knew even if they survived the experience, I would not have any more new conversation with them. I would not be able to see where their life was afterwards. It's like saying goodbye to a friend and then never seeing them again. And granted, we got a sequel, but we didn't know that at the time. So I can't say anything bad about it. I love the story. I love the characters. I love the gameplay. The horror aspects were fucking brilliant. I love the exploration. I love the world. I love the collectibles. Even the online mode. Like at the time, for whatever reason, all these games had to include an online mode, which I was never a fan of. Even like the Uncharted one, which was fine. It can be enjoyable. I didn't think anything of it, but I lost hundreds of hours to The Last of Us online mode. I just don't know. I don't know if it had something to do with my infatuation with the game or if it was generally a very good online mode, but I fucking loved that one too. And when I was done, and I mean done, I like 100%ed that is a game I had to 100%. I then went online to see other people play it and experience it. Multiple people. I would see them play the entire thing. I wanted to see their reaction to all the emotional beats, to the ending, to the scenes, the awesome scenes, the scary scenes. Just, did they share the same feelings that I did? And the answer was yes. Like, I could see it on their face. It was like, oh, every single person, every single streamer that I saw that played the games, I saw myself. Those reactions is exactly what I felt. It was like we were all in unison, even though we didn't know anybody. We didn't know each other. And how much love that game got. I knew that this was something special, was something different. And yeah, it's my favorite game of all time. So while yes, I can say that probably Elder Scrolls V Skyrim should be at number 1, I can't place it above my favorite game, The Last of Us. I love that experience. Even with number 2, which I don't hate part 2, but I do think there were some bad choices made in that game. I can still easily go back to this one and just still get lost in its world and its characters. And if I ever hear somebody has not played it and they don't know anything about it, you best damn believe I'm like, oh no, we're playing it, and I'll see their experience, because I love to see that on them, to experience the same emotions that I did when I played it for the first time. And it's a shame that Naughty Dog is what they are now, because I would really like to still talk positively about them, and I can't quite do that. I can't say they're like the most terrible company out in the world. There's ones out there that it's gonna be hard to beat in that regards, but yeah, I feel just like a lot of these other game companies we've been talking about, their peak was probably The Last of Us, and I don't know if we'll ever get to that point again, but at least we have this one, and at least I have my memories of it. So yeah, Last of Us, number 1. And that's all I have, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think? First and foremost, I'm sure you're like, well, if it was the Game Award, this is the ranking of it. Whatever, throw that in the comments. I don't care. If you do want to rank the DICE Awards, let me know if you think that my order of things makes sense. Do you want to take how the gaming landscape is now versus how it was when the individual games won? Just let me know. There's so many different ways to rank these, especially with how strong and powerful the top 5 are. Or who knows, maybe you're just such a huge fan of Fallout 4, you discovered it for the first time, it's the first time you played a game like that it's your number 1. Like it makes sense. I don't think any of these would be a terrible number 1. It's just, this is my order of how I enjoyed them. So there you go, guys. That's my ranking of it. Until next time, please stay safe out there and have a good one.